Welcome everyone to the fourth installment in our Women's Leadership Wednesday series. Today's panel discussion is entitled Developing Your Leadership Path. I'm Teresa Boyer. I direct the Ann Walsh McNulty Institute for Women's Leadership at Villanova University. And we have a broad mission of fostering women's advancement and gender equity through education, advocacy, community building, and the collaborative creation of new knowledge. It's my absolute pleasure to be joined by two of the individuals who have been instrumental in work at the Institute, including Mary Alice Morrow and Jane Mullaney. So I'm just going to ask them to wave and then they can turn their screens back off. They'll join in later. They both have done a lot of work on our leadership development programs, which you'll hear a little more about in this panel session. Thank you. Now I'd like to turn it over to Corie Alicea. Corie is one of my favorite people at Villanova. She earned a bachelor's degree from Villanova University School of Business in 1996, so we're co-alums, yay. She has more than 9 years of professional experience in higher education administration. And Corie previously served as program coordinator for professional education in the College of Professional Studies at Villanova. And in that role, she helped support the Women's Leadership Development Certificate Program. She was also a speaker in that series, particularly around values-based leadership. And so we feel a particular affinity to her work. Currently, Corie works as an assistant director for graduate admissions in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and is pursuing a master's degree in public administration, both at Villanova University. Corie, take it away.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate that wonderful welcome. So I'm super excited to be here today with our distinguished panelists. I'm going to introduce them all to you briefly and ask them each to kind of wave and say a quick hello. Starting with Elizabeth DeMott, who is the Director for Strategic Projects at the Archdiocese of Newark. Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here.
Next, we have Scarlett Stout, who is the Director of Agent Experience for Keller Williams Realty. Scarlett?
Hi, everyone. Super excited.
Next up, we have Dr. Michelle Talbert Horsey, who is the Director for Career Development Services at the Harrisburg Area Community College. Dr. Michelle?
Hello, everyone.
And finally, we have Nicole Thompson, who is a tax manager for Ernst & Young. Nikki?
Hi, everyone.
So we have a lot to discuss today, and I'm going to jump right in with the questions. My first question, I will start off with Scarlett. Scarlett, as part of my own professional development, I had the opportunity to take part in a pilot workshop for the Women's Leadership Development Certificate Program. During that workshop, I learned that leadership is a mindset and not necessarily a title or a position. That knowledge was pivotal for me and really helped to expand my thinking to see that in many aspects of my life, I am already a leader, even though I had not ever considered myself as such. How has your definition or perception of leadership evolved or changed?
You know, leadership definitely is a mindset. And before I got into this program, I always equated leadership to authority or a role, when really leadership is a behavior, it's an action, and that action is influence. Leadership is all about making others greater as a result of your presence and making sure that that impact lasts in your absence.
Love that. Thank you so much, Scarlett. Michelle, your thoughts, please.
Well, before I started the program, much like Scarlett, I thought of leadership as a title. I didn't consider all of the other roles that I play in my life as being leadership roles. After I've gone through the program, what I realized is that the roles that I play outside of my professional life, outside of my professional world, are just as important as the roles that I play in my professional world, one is not better than the other. One actually influences the other very much so. And for me, in a very positive way.
Thank you. Elizabeth, let's hear from you next, please.
I think it's a great question, and I would agree with my colleagues on how the perception I had as well coming into this is that leadership is a type of a role, and it wasn't necessarily the qualities that a person demonstrates. And I have absolutely found a change in my thinking. And as Michelle just said, leadership can come through in so many different roles in your life. I think about myself. I'm a mother, a student, an employee, a volunteer. In all those instances, I have the opportunity to be a leader because I demonstrate how things can be done well and how I can teach others to do things well. And something that I feel very personally, very strongly about is you can leave things better than you found them. You can teach somebody to do something a little bit better that makes their life a little bit better. And I think that leadership really instills all of those qualities.
Love that. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. I'm hearing a theme here about influence. Nikki, what do you think?
I'm on the influence train. I am. If you were to ask me now, what makes a leader, or is so-and-so a good leader, I would ask about their impact and their influence. So what do their colleagues say about them? What do their clients say? So it's not necessarily, are they impressing their boss? It's, are they making a good impression on everyone around them? And it's not a title, as everyone else has said, but I think it comes down to as simple as, doing the right thing in the situation. It doesn't have to be some grand gesture to be a leader, or you don't have to get things done. So my thoughts of a leader before were, oh, well, we got this done, or we accomplished this task, where, everybody here has already said that it's much more of the journey to get there rather than their title or, what you've accomplished.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Nikki. My next question, I'll start off with Michelle for this one. Values often based on internal beliefs that help drive, let me start over. Values often based on internal beliefs that help drive our decision-making and informed our behaviors. How have your values shaped your leadership goals?
Oh, that's such a great question. They have shaped my goals significantly. And I will tell you, I'm kind of referring back to the first question. Before I started this program, if someone were to ask me, and we were asked to select our values off of a sheet of paper, and I was selecting things that I thought I should be and goals that I should have based on my role that I play as Director of Career Development Services at HAC. I didn't think about my other roles. I just thought about, this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to have. My values are supposed to be. So I went through this exercise. I think you may have led the exercise, Corie. And there was one value that stood out that made me stop. And that value was authenticity. And I stopped there, I stopped the assignment, and I sat there, and it really hit me because I realized at that moment, I really wasn't being authentic, although I claimed that it was a value. I stopped, got another sheet of paper, did the exercise again, but this time with a different lens. I started thinking about the other roles that I have as wife, as mother, as volunteer, and the other areas of my life where I find that I am a leader. I started thinking about those values. And after I circled those values, I realized I really started to think about my job. And I said, this is the kind of leader that I want to be. The other stuff, maybe not so much. Other than being authentic, everything else I circled was just stuff. It didn't mean anything to me. But the stuff that I circled meant something. And I realized, I said, this is really who I am. This is who I need to show up this is the person that needs to show up every day to work. This is the person that I'm showing my team. So that's how it's been able to shape my goals.
Love that. What powerful insight. Thank you, Michelle. Scarlett, let's hear from you.
Well, Michelle pretty much said, I mean, I totally agree with what she says. And in fact, the transparency is what really stuck out to me, as well as, individuality. But, before that exercise, I really hadn't thought about that question. And it was really hard for me. Like, I remember watching everybody else do it, and I felt like, oh my gosh, am I not smart or something? Because why is this not registering with me? And once I had heard all the other ladies kind of talk about their values, it put it in a better perspective for me. Transparency is huge, both in and out of work, both in your personal life and in your career. And I strive to not only be authentic in who I am, but to be transparent along the way and to stick to who I am and what my values are, and making sure that they align with my role or whatever career that I'm in.
Love that. Thank you so much, Scarlett. So authenticity and transparency. Let's hear from Elizabeth next.
I love those two words, and I'm going to continue to ride that train because it was so apparent to me when we conducted this exercise to look at your values and really assess what your values were. And I like what I'm hearing about, it's really the whole person. It's the whole me. I'm not a different person at work than I am at home, in the sense that transparency, accountability, communication, education, these are values that I have that thread through my entire life. And I think as a leader, when you start to live your values in, the word is authentic and it's the right word. When you start to live your values and demonstrate and show people that this is what you stand for, this is what you show up and deliver every single day, that the person that they get will be consistent and will be fair because they are always holding to their values. It's your true north. And I think that as a leader and as someone who has influence over other individuals who are leaders or who are looking to come into leadership roles, I think that message of be your true self. Don't be afraid. Don't hide what you think because maybe you think it's wrong or somebody's going to look at you in the wrong way. If you know who you are, be who you are and be proud of it and own it. And that's where that authenticity and having values that mean something to you will hold true for you throughout your career and through life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great point. And it brings me back to what Michelle said about being purposeful, and how when she started the exercise, she realized she was just, kind of filling in what she thought she should because of her role. And I really love what I'm hearing about the idea that you have to be purposeful to make sure that how you're presenting yourself matches with what you believe inside. So Nikki, let's hear from you. What do you think?
I agree with what has been said so far. And I think that one of the values and, theories that I subscribe to is leading by example. And all of us, I'm pretty sure the whole entire room said we started the activity just as Michelle had described, where we picked the things we thought we should. And then once we were able to peel away the layers, then we were able to move on to, okay, this is who I actually am. So I think as cultures in workplaces change and communities, if you're not bringing your authentic self, how are you expecting others to do that? So if you set the example that you're doing this and whether you're in that leadership position or not, and I think especially if you have those titles, you need to be open and upfront about those things so that other people with the other titles, like the lesser, not leadership titles, as everybody tends to think of, is comfortable bringing that. Because the more comfortable you are with the position that you're in and how you're applying your values there, you're going to grow more. The company is going to grow more. The group is going to thrive. So I think that for me, it was a lot of sharing knowledge and bringing that purpose. Purpose was one of my values as well, in independence. And so I think that as you learn these things and the more you do it and the more open you are and you realize like, oh, the world didn't end when I said that I didn't like vanilla ice cream and everybody else did. Like, people accept that. And I think the more that we do it, the more other people will do it. And then it just becomes normal. And
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. The themes were, I think that I heard, authenticity, being purposeful, being consistent. What did Scarlett say?
Transparency.
Transparency, also very important. Thank you.
Mhm.
So I think that we can all agree that the key, I think, is to be consistently reflective on these things. That it's just not something, that happens by happenstance, but that you all took time to sit down and really think about your values and how they match up with your goals. So those are great insights. So I'll move on to the next question. And this question, I'll start off with Elizabeth. So while there are many leadership development plans, I think it is uncommon that two people advance in exactly the same way. Often factors such as circumstance, varying skill levels, obstacles, and access to resources affect opportunities for professional development. As a result, it is necessary that we advance ourselves as leaders and our leadership goals in different ways. How have you found your specific voice and worked to develop your leadership journey?
This is a great question, and I've had such an interesting journey that brought me to this point. I think what I originally would say is that I originally feel that my voice was repeating what others wanted to hear. That, being a leader or finding a voice was not as easy as I anticipated. And for many years, although I've had some, excellent leadership roles and I've had some great leaders that I've worked for, I don't know that I was confident enough to share my true voice. And it took taking this program, the Women's Leadership Development Program, to allow me to become very introspective and look inside and do the work about what are my values? Who do I want to be? What is my voice? What do I have to say? And I learned that when you find your voice and you learn how to advocate for yourself, that if you want that promotion, no matter what your background is, no matter what you think your education level is, if you have something inside you that gives you the drive and the ability to speak up and advocate for yourself and have the knowledge to support it and move forward, then you should. And I think that helped me as I stepped back, because I went through a career pivot and learned a lot. But this program really helped me identify and center on how can I find that voice to make sure that I can move forward and be a good leader.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Powerful insight. I appreciate that so much. Nikki, let's hear from you.
So, well, Elizabeth was saying that she was saying what other people wanted to hear. Early in my career, I just wasn't saying anything. I was from the school of thought that if I kept my head down and did good work and, did what was expected of me, that everybody would just notice that and recognize it. And, things would just go how they're supposed to go. And now I know that's the total opposite of what we should be doing. It took leaving the place where I had started my career, making a couple of different transitions, but finally finding a place where I was comfortable and started to really advocate for myself. Like Elizabeth had explained, if you don't say what you want, people are just going to assume you're okay with what you have. And I think that regardless of what it is, I know Elizabeth had mentioned like a promotion or something like that. It could be, I want exposure to this type of project, or I noticed that somebody else is getting opportunities where maybe I'm not. Is there something I'm not doing? So I think that it's really looking internal. And again, all of these things kind of come together because, your values help you figure out what you really want to be doing. So as you're figuring those out, even just in conversation, it doesn't have to be like a formal sit down with your supervisor or the leader of your, church or anything like that. It can just be, in passing and saying like, hey, I heard this project's starting, like, how's that going? Do you need any help? And being vocal. And I know that sometimes it's scary to ask people if they need help with anything because you don't know what you're going to get. But a lot of the time, just asking that question, they won't give you anything to do, but they'll remember that you asked and they're like, oh, right now we're okay, but thanks for asking. And it starts to build that relationship. So one of the best pieces of advice my husband gave me when we started dating was never turn down a networking opportunity. If it's, I know the last thing you want to do after you've worked 8 hours is go hang out with your boss and have dinner and drinks or something like that. If it's a group event, but do it. They notice much more when you're not there as opposed to you showing up, even if you're there a half hour and everybody stays the whole night, it doesn't matter. As long as you are showing your presence, speaking up if you don't think something looks right or sounds right. And while you also advocate for yourself, make sure that you're advocating for others. I know that something that we talked about in the program was that we all can advocate for anybody else a lot easier. But it's good to remind, especially women, to help bring up the women behind us. All too often, and especially in male-dominated industries, the women that are in those, like have those leadership titles, are a little bit hardened by the adversities that they had to face. And I couldn't think of a better way, but almost hold a grudge to the women behind them coming up where, I blazed this trail and now it's easier for you. So I'm going to try to make it a little bit harder. And I think that experiencing something like that throughout my career has made me want to do the total opposite. I'm very into mentoring and sharing knowledge and ultimately creating that independence. And leaders across the board sometimes are afraid that if they give you too much information or train you too well, that you'll take their position. And I think that is the opposite of what a good leader is. If everybody is learning and growing, then if you take my position, then I did something wrong. I should also be moving forward. I should be, moving to that next level, moving to a different project. It shouldn't be this fear that something's going to be taken away from me because I'm helping you.
Right. Love that. Great insights. And I especially appreciate your comments about not only being authentic, but taking time to build relationships through networking. For me, you really spoke to my heart when you talked about learning to advocate for yourself and, finding your voice. I don't specifically remember exactly, but you said something to the effect of if you don't say what you want, people will assume you're happy with what you have. That is so powerful and so true. So thank you for those insights and remarks. Let's see, Michelle, I don't believe I heard from you yet. What do you think?
Well, for me, I leaned into my values, specifically authenticity and transparency. And I realized something that Elizabeth said, When I did have a voice in the room, it was the voice that everyone else wanted me to have. It was the voice I thought. I said things and did things that now that I think about it, I'm a little ashamed of, because I wasn't acting necessarily in the best interest of my team. I was acting in everyone else's best interest. I wasn't acting in the best interest of myself. I was acting in a manner and behaving in a manner that I thought I should behave this way because this is my role. And I can appreciate what Nikki is talking about in terms of being an advocate for yourself. I had a situation recently that I would like to share. We had an opportunity at my current place of employment to do a hybrid work situation. And initially, I wasn't going to ask for it because I thought, oh, they're never going to give it to me. I'm not going to ask for that. And then something inside of me, I don't know what it was, something came over me and it said, just ask. What is the worst they're going to say is no, right? Everyone's heard no. I've heard no before and I've survived lots of no's. And I asked for it and they said, okay, sure, that's not a problem. So I do believe in advocating. So having that voice, bringing my voice to the table, I am learning. It is an evolving process for me. I'm not completely there yet. I still have moments where I'm silent, but I am doing much better in terms of making sure I'm advocating not only for myself, but that I'm advocating constantly for my team. I put my team oftentimes before myself to make sure they have what they need to be successful, because I feel if they're successful, then I'm going to be successful.
Love that. And that goes right along with what, like you said, what Nikki was saying in terms of, as you rise, bring others with you. And that you shouldn't have the mindset that, training up sort of your mentees will mean that they'll take something from you at some point. The mindset should be that we're all going to develop and grow together. So great insights again. Love what I'm hearing. This is a great conversation. Scarlett, what do you think?
So I am so team advocacy. That's another huge one for me. When I had entered this program, I was in a role that I'd been in for about 2 years. And, everybody said I was doing such a good job and I was successful, but something was missing for me. And I realized that I just wasn't happy. And it's okay to be good at your job and not be happy doing the job that you're good at. It's totally okay. And I think the practice of my values, I realized that it didn't align with who I was and who I wanted to be. And I wasn't passionate about it. And so I finally said, you know what, this is not for me anymore. I'm going to resign. And I was able to give 100% to what happens from here. And, I was still in the program and was able to confide in a lot of the ladies in the room here about my position and where I was and what I was striving to do, specifically Michelle, who was a huge key point for me throughout the program. But I would have to say that, being a woman in leadership is hard, and it's not easy, but you just can't give up and always advocate for yourself and for others. I'm in a role now where I can advocate for people, and I so love that because that's my passion. And being in the program helped me identify that. And I have the ability to advocate for all of our leadership team and also advocate for myself on top of it. So that would be how I found my voice, and also striving to not ever be the smartest person in the room. I always wanted to come from a place of growing and learning and, being in a room full of people that had more experience than I did in the industry that I'm in. So always striving to be the not so smart person in the room. And to Nicole's point, I have my own little saying, and it's pick up the phone, take the call. You know, you never know what opportunity lies on the other end of that phone call. Have the conversation. It doesn't hurt to have a conversation. And if anything, you're building a relationship and they might call you with an opportunity, or just let people know who you are and what you're doing within your organization. Let it be known, you know, how awesome of a leader you are. I think that's where you can find your voice, is just by advocating who you are and what your value proposition is to yourself, to your organization, and to any other potential organization that might be interested in you, or you might be interested in them.
Love that. So pick up the phone and take the call.
Take the call. That's what I say. I get calls all the time from like competitors, and I'm like, sure, I'll take it. I'll hear what you have to say. And then I'll say my little, oh, okay, you know, and then they'll call me again and just like, oh, I heard about so-and-so. So like, just have the conversation. It doesn't hurt to have the conversation.
That's right.
Build a relationship.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And I really appreciate what you said about, practicing or not only speaking up for yourself, but getting used to sort of tooting your own horn and letting people know who you are and what you've done. That's definitely something that I'm not familiar with, but I'm trying to work on it, because it really does, change your mindset, then changes your actions and your beliefs. And I shared this with you all before the first time we met, when I was asked to be a panelist during your training. And I was sharing that I was thinking to myself, well, I'm not a panelist, I'm not a public speaker. And even though that's a quality and something that I'm working towards, if I keep saying those things about myself, I will never reach the goal. So that's really powerful, about getting used to speaking up and saying who you are and what you've done. And I think especially as professional women, that might be something that we're not as used to as our male counterparts, but I think it's an important insight that you bring up, an important point.
Thank you.
All right, so next question, and this one will be directed towards Nikki first. So a popular refrain from countless self-help advocates has been that failing to plan is the same as a plan to fail. I believe this is a quote from Benjamin Franklin. The idea here being that it is important to be purposeful about where you are and where you would like to go. Then you can develop a plan to help you achieve your goals. Talk about the plan you developed in the fall. Where are you with it? How are you putting your plan into action, and what's next?
Okay, so I love this question because I'm a total planner. I write everything down. I think that by writing things down and having some sort of idea, I'm the type of person that likes to have everything planned out. But I think you need at least a little bit of a direction as to where you want to be, so that you can determine what those steps are to get there. So my personal plan from the fall wasn't anything grand. I know that there were other women in the program who are pursuing an MBA. They are switching careers. Mine was more so refining smaller skills, I'll say. It's not a grand finale to come here. But with moving through the plan, it's working on those things, the value side that we were talking about earlier, where it's important to me to be able to mentor. So as an accountant, you may not think like, oh, you just sit at a computer all day, you probably don't talk to many people, but there are opportunities at work to mentor. And work doesn't have to fit all those boxes for you. The nice thing about the plan, and it's been mentioned before, is that it's in all facets of your life. So just because you're not getting all of one of your values at work doesn't mean that it's not the right job for you or right position. There's other opportunities. So I also volunteer in the community, very involved in volunteering at work and in the community. So I think that in terms of the plan, it's something that's going to hold you accountable. And then who doesn't love crossing something off of a to-do list? I feel like that's like the biggest part of the accomplishment, is like, once you're finished with that, you get to cross it off and move on to the next thing. So I think it's a good thing to ask, how is the plan going? So I am a tax accountant. It is tax season. The plan has gone out the window at this point for now. But the good thing is you get to check in with it. So I check in with my goals, I'd say every month or so, depending upon, the time frame of the goals, how things are going. But it really gives you something to ground yourself to. So even with it being tax season and, staring at computers all day, I was like, you know what? I wrote down that I want to do yoga at least 3 times a week. So then it's in my head, okay, I should be doing this. I can take time. I can say, no, I can't be on this call. I need to be doing these other things. So while maybe I'm not doing yoga 3 times a week throughout, all of tax season, there's still that little, okay, how do I work this in? Is there can I change my plan a little bit where maybe it's, get outside for a walk, something like that. And I think that's the beauty of these plans, is that it's a living document. You're not tied to that plan. So if you're finding it's not working, or you need additional steps, or you were a little bit unrealistic originally with your steps to get to that goal or time frame, the only person that is judging you based off of that plan is you. Yes, we're holding each other accountable, but I think that especially in our smaller groups, we were talking about, we're much more forgiving with each other. So if I went to my group and said, I didn't do yoga this week, they'd be like, that's okay, just get it next week. It's okay. And having those people to lean on, I think is important as well when you get a little bit off track. So what's next? I think that revisiting those goals often and coming back to, what do they ultimately boil down to? There's the mentoring that I've talked about already. There's delegating to give other people opportunities, the wellness side and setting boundaries. So there's a couple of resources that I've come across that I would like to continue to leverage those to say, this is what I want my day to look like, or my week. And then just continue to push for that change that we keep talking about, change that culture, give women more opportunities, give anybody more opportunities that's qualified for them. I think that with the plan, it gave us a starting point, and that was the big first step. So then now the next step is the work of actually carrying out all of those little steps that you broke down. And I think that that's very important, because you want to make sure that they're realistic. So if you just started reading books and you say, I'm going to read 52 books this year, I don't know that that's necessarily realistic, depending upon what you are looking for. But don't set yourself up for failure with something like that. Make sure that they're attainable and realistic.
Great. Yeah. So basically a holistic approach is what you're talking about for your plan. I heard some professional goals, some personal goals, some wellness and health goals. And I really liked what you said about it's a living document, something that you should, recheck and go back to often, and also share with your network and your peers, so they can, one, help hold you accountable, but also encourage you, and, maybe not let you be too hard on yourself, and give you some grace in the areas that maybe during certain seasons you might fall a little bit short. So that's really great. Thanks, Nikki. Michelle, let's hear from you next. What do you think?
Well, my plan, I had to pivot. I planned out some things, mostly professional things, but now listening to Nikki, I'm thinking I should have put some personal things on that list too. I agree with Nikki that it's a living document, and it's constantly evolving and changing. And it should, as you change and as you grow, your goals should also be changing and growing. I don't have the same goals that I had last year. I have different things this year, and next year the goals are going to be different. Maybe they may be the same, but it's going to be a twist to them in terms of how I'm going to implement them. Well, my plan, I had to change some things. And I wasn't initially very excited about the change, to be quite frank with you, Corie. I was a little perturbed at myself for having to change a goal. Then I realized, no, this is part of the process. This is all part of the growing process. And it's okay to toss some things to the side because I'm no longer in that space. And the more frequently that I use my voice and advocate for myself, the more things are coming to me that I'm adding onto my list, both professionally and in my personal space as a volunteer and in doing some other things as well. These things are coming to me because I'm speaking up more. So I would say, where am I in my plan? I'm all over the place with my plan. There's some things that I have accomplished that I can check off the list. Nikki, I need claps for that. I checked 2 things off my list so far. 2 things off my list. There's one thing that I'm still working on, and there's one that I completely tossed to the side and said, this may be good, but it's not good for me right now. I need to put something else in its place, and I'm okay with that.
Again, we're hearing about that reflection and that constant need to kind of go back and sort of do a temperature check and say, where am I with these things? And do these things even make sense for me and who I am today? And having sort of the knowledge to understand that you're going to sometimes need to make adjustments. And thank you for being real and sharing that it's not always easy and it's definitely not comfortable. Because I think that a lot of people, our listeners today especially, could really relate to what you were saying. So I'm just going to pause for a moment because I realized I forgot to do something at the start of our discussion. I was so excited to jump right in, but I would like to give everyone who's watching and listening today an opportunity to join in the conversation. So if you have questions for our panelists, please take a moment to send them through the Q&A function here in the webinar. And in just a few minutes, we'll get to some of your questions. So back to your leadership plan. Elizabeth, didn't hear from you yet. What do you think?
I had such a great time working on the personal leadership plan in the fall. And I'm like Nikki, I'm a planner. I like checklists. I like project plans. And I think for me, it was really important to hone in on my professional goals because I came over the last 3 years doing a real career pivot. For me, it was important to crystallize what I felt I wanted my future to look like. And I applaud my classmates because there was such a diverse perspective on looking at the development of the personal leadership plan that was holistic. Some people felt very strongly that it needed to be more personal, that it was focused on a wellness activity or activities, things like that. And I think that was the beauty of it, that we had the opportunity to make it what we really wanted it to be, and that really reflected what our values were, who we were as women, who we were as leaders. And as we've really talked through, leadership occurs in every single step of your day. You're doing it all day long, all the time. And for me personally, I took it from the perspective, I had a short-term professional goal, something that I can implement currently in my current role and aligns to a goal that I have at work. So I'm supporting my organization's mission with my goal. And then I have 2 other goals that are future state for me. They are where I would like to be in my leadership journey in the coming 3 to 5 years. And those are big, and those are a little scary to put down on paper, to be quite frank, because you're really holding yourself accountable to achieve something. And there's a lot of work that's going to go into it, and you might not know all the steps that you need to get there. But part of the beauty of the leadership program is that I was surrounded by women that had come from very different walks of life and were in very different stages of their careers. And everyone had something to offer that you were able to ask a question or get someone's insight or get their perspective. And it made you think a little bit differently. So I really applaud that factor of it. For right now, as what's next, I look at my plan fairly regularly, maybe once a month. And am I working on it once a month? Not necessarily, but I keep it top of mind so that I remember, what is my future goal? Where do I want to get to? And what am I doing today that's going to get me there? And holding myself accountable for the goal that I have right now. Am I really working on it? Am I adding value? Is someone better because of what I've done with this goal, that I've taught them something that they can make their work life better, or they can move forward and have a little bit more confidence? So I think it's a combination of a lot of factors. But I think at the end of the day, writing something down and holding yourself accountable to something is a very powerful leadership lesson, because as leaders, we need to do that all the time.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Writing it down and holding yourself accountable sounds scary, but I totally agree with you. I think there's really, I can't think of another way than to be able to kind of check yourself. And especially what you said about, am I adding value? Is what I'm doing impactful for others? I think that is a really inspirational way to look at, taking the time to do this work. So thank you for your insights. Scarlett, let's hear from you.
Well, unlike Nicole and Elizabeth, I am not a planner. I don't like to plan. I am a, fly by the seat of my pants kind of girl. Anyone's like, let's plan something. I'm like, you know what, let's just play it by ear. Because I feel like if we're planning something, we're putting things set in stone and we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. So let's just not do that. But, I looked at it much differently when I was hearing from some of the other ladies in the room, what they were developing. And to Elizabeth's point, being in a room full of women, all different walks of life, all different levels and stages of their career. I mean, what a blessing it was to be going through the transition that I was going through while being in a room full of such wonderful women. And one thing I did realize was, it doesn't matter if you're just starting in the position or if you've been in the position, in a leadership position for however many years, we all are kind of going through like the same battles. Like, it doesn't just happen when you first start. It doesn't just happen, towards the end of your career. Like, a lot of the struggles and the challenges I was facing, Elizabeth was still facing, Nicole was still facing. So it really gave me an opportunity to give myself some grace and to sit back and go, okay, like I need to not be so hard on myself and, feel like I'm not meeting my own expectation, when really I don't even know what my own expectation is. So then I thought, okay, maybe it does make sense to like plan something. So right to Michelle's point, and I think everyone else has said it on the call, it's not permanent, it's not set in stone. You can constantly pivot and change and tweak it, because life changes, things happen, your happiness changes, your passion changes. For me, I realized that I wanted to be the voice for people that don't go to college. I know a lot of these women in this room know that I did not go to college. I knew right away I did not want to go to college. I knew that I was going to have to do something, but I just knew that sitting in a classroom to get a degree just did not make sense to me. And I have gotten as far as I've come by being authentic and being all transparent, which is why I love those two words so much, because I feel like I, in my own way, am a good model for that. So I really wanted to be an advocate for people that did not go to college and help spread the word that success isn't always and doesn't have to be tied to a degree, that, you find a skill set and you own it, and you're with the right company, sky's the limit, especially if you're raising your hand, like Nicole said, taking initiative, taking on stretch assignments, which, I've been big on, has led me to some other opportunities. Being in a committee with like-minded individuals. I'm now the ambassador for Delaware for Keller Williams Young Professionals. So I've taken on that role, which was something that I had put in my leadership plan, but not to be an ambassador. So I actually went kind of further than what I had planned. So here again, it isn't always going to work out the way that you thought it was going to. I think the scariest thing about writing the leadership plan is, we fantasize and romanticize our goals and our dreams, but we do tend to dread the execution of them when the good stuff, the magic is in the stuff we're avoiding. So just do it. Just make up your mind and just do it, even if it's little by little. But you have the power. You are the driver of this, of your leadership. You can steer it and turn it any which way you want.
Love that. Oh my goodness, Scarlett. I really do admire your transparency and your authenticity. And I really loved what you said about feeling empowered by your voice to speak to a certain identity. And I could listen to you talk all day. So we're getting close to time. This has gone by so quickly. I can't believe it. So I'm going to check in with Jane in just a minute to see if there's questions. So I'll give everyone who's watching an opportunity, if you have a question, to quickly put it in the chat. Sorry, not in the chat, in the Q&A function. While you're doing that, I'm just going to ask one last question and we'll go around really quickly. And it is about your leadership vision statement. So I know that one of the first deliverables of the program was to craft a personal leadership vision statement. And from my own experience, this is not an easy task. Would you be willing to share your personal vision statements with us today? Elizabeth?
Absolutely. And it was a very, very thought-provoking and wonderful and scary exercise. It was, I think all of us have that feeling. So my vision statement says, to be an educator and share my wisdom and life lessons with others to help them succeed wherever they are in life.
Thank you. Michelle?
To be an authentic servant leader who transforms lives through transparent and reliable counsel.
Thank you. Nikki?
I strive to lead by example and achieve success through mentorship and structure.
Thank you. And Scarlett?
To maximize true authenticity that influences relationships, opportunities, and noble change.
Thank you, ladies, so much. I think that hearing your personal leadership vision statements after our conversation for this past hour really hits home, like why you landed on those specific words that you chose. They were very meaningful, and I feel like they encapsulate a lot of what you shared with us today in terms of your experience, which seems to me to have been a transformational one. So thank you for sharing with us about, the cohort that you went through, a bit about what it was like, and the work that you did. Now I'd like to ask Jane if there are any questions that our viewers would like me to ask the panelists.
Thank you, Corie, and thank you to our panelists. It looks like we just have time for one question. The question we'll go to now is one of our audience members writes that I'm very interested in this idea about using your voice and the positive outcomes that have resulted. Could Michelle or others talk about the process of overcoming reluctance to speak up? So Corie, I'll let you take us out with that question.
Okay, well, we'll start with Michelle since the question was directed to Michelle.
Okay, how did I overcome that? Well, for me, it was the realization that I had every right to be in the space that I was in. I have just as many credentials. I have just as many and powerful experiences as the folks that were in the room. And I have something to share that's of value. I am of value. So that's how I was able to overcome not speaking up. I have something to say, and you may not like what I have to say, and that's okay that you don't like what I have to say. But I still have something of value to say, and I have every right to say it. And I'm going to share my thoughts.
Thank you. Love that. Oh my goodness. Elizabeth, do you have something to share as well?
I agree with what Michelle said. And there's a quote that I came across a long time ago that says, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And it's really important to don't doubt yourself. As Michelle said, if you've got the credentials, or maybe even if you don't have the credentials, if you have an opinion, if you have conviction, I think is the word I would say, if you believe in what you're saying, then speak up and say it. The worst that's going to happen is someone's going to say no, or they might disagree with you, but that's okay, because therein lies the challenge of finding your voice and knowing how to respond and knowing how to deal with people differently and growing through hearing no, or hearing that, that sounds different than what I think. That's okay. Keep challenging, keep opening your mouth, and keep pushing.
Thank you so much. Nikki, last words from you.
I think it depends upon what exactly you're trying to communicate. So it's no surprise, my advice would be to prepare. So my specific example is, if you're going in to ask for a raise, if you go in and you just say, I think I need this and I am entitled to it, that's not being prepared. It's not going to get you the response that you desire. So you need to do the research, come in with facts, be confident. And obviously that doesn't apply to every situation. If you're in a meeting and hear something, that just doesn't sound right, obviously speak up. But to me, being prepared and kind of thinking through what I'm going to say, or maybe the points that I'm going to make, and maybe thinking about some rebuttals. If you say, yeah, but I don't really agree with you on that because of this, then if you're more prepared, you'll come off as more confident, which has already been addressed. But I think that's the biggest piece of advice that I have.
Great advice. Thank you. Scarlett.
As Maxine Waters says, I am reclaiming my time.
I love it.
That's don't speak with confidence and, authority. Like Michelle said, you're there for a reason, and you have to remind yourself, if you weren't meant to be in that room, you wouldn't have been invited. So speak up, speak with confidence, and don't let anybody interrupt you. That's my biggest pet peeve, is I hate when I'm in the middle of my thought and I get interrupted, specifically by the opposite sex. It's extremely rude, and you need to call it out. That's what I do.
That's real talk. Thank you.
You really do. That happened to me the other day, and it made that other person look, unprofessional. So just, own the position that you're in, own the environment that you're in, own that you are meant to be sitting next to people that you're sitting next to, because right now, if you're not equipped to be a part of the conversation, you most likely would not have been invited. So take a deep breath, like Nicole said, think about your thoughts, prepare, or you can just, word vomit like I do, and, own it.
Thank you.